Greetings chosen, I've been waiting here for you since the beginning of this universe. You know the world is fading, there's a secret power hidden in your soul. Don't be afraid to use it. There are voices in your head saying that you're a failure, you're not good enough, but you know that's not true. There is a secret power hidden in your soul. Don't be afraid to use it, 'cause you're the one.
Greetings, free marketeers. I am Patrick Smith. Welcome back to Disenthrall. Today is going to be a viewer call-in special show. We're going to talk with Kiernan. Welcome to the show, Kiernan. Oh, and then I leave his mic muted. God, I got to get better at the intros to these shows. Hey, Kiernan. How's it going?
All right. Yep.
So we don't have it. Good, man. We don't have video for Kiernan today, which is totally fine. I try and keep an open door policy for people that want to have good conversations. All I do in life is seek out good conversations about people, with ethics and philosophy and things like that. So hopefully we're going to have one of those here today. Kiernan is a free market anarcho-capitalist working in information technology, and he wanted to call in and talk about how to achieve freedom, which is a brilliant and very important topic, and I'm sure everybody in the comments will probably have lots of opinions on this particular topic. And this is not some like fancy, flashy superstar guest like we've had the past couple of times. And when we have those guests, I feel bad because I can't really engage with the comments as much because I need to stay focused. But this one, let's make it like a more chill stream. Let's hang out. Let's have a good time. Let's have a good discussion. I'll definitely, watch the comments and interact with you guys. So, Kiernan, what about how to achieve freedom would you like to talk about today?
Well, technically, I've been pretty creative with the idea of anarcho-capitalism, and I really want to try to help people out a lot. And what I mean by a lot, I actually want to do it better than for what you see out of your local or I guess nationwide politicians would do, but I want to do it in a sense where I actually get people's minds, thinking about good ideas. And I want to try to, bring people to understand the morality of what the state does versus what, peaceful, voluntary, human beings would want to do if they were to, organize in their own fashion, right? In a manner that makes them feel comfortable.
Okay. Sounds good.
And pretty much I guess from a good portion of libertarians, especially the statist-driven ones, they would always try to say, well, this is why this is why the Libertarian Party is here, and you have to go out and vote for the third way, and that's how change will be achieved. But we tend to see, from basically ever since governments have been created, that voting doesn't solve anything. And no matter who's in power, every politician will act in its own interest to basically turn their back up against people. And that never becomes a proper solution. But I personally believe that, the best way to achieve freedom is to probably interact with those that you care in your own community. I've been following, I guess, a good YouTuber by the name of Cal Monet, if you like him.
I have
heard of him.
I was his very first Patreon supporter. So yeah, I'm very familiar.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I personally like Cal. I think he's probably one of the best YouTubers out there, because I personally was thinking in his own viewpoint to try to go out to people in my community, in which I'm from Albany, New York. I'm from a very liberal part of New York, but I was thinking about trying to probably talk to people, basically whenever I'm free in Albany, to try to spread the idea of freedom. And what I can do is I could create I guess like a Unitarian chapter, right? To get people's ideas and principles valued, in that sector. And then, once there's like a huge population of people that like it, that can actually be big enough to secede away from, the current government that people live under. And I think that would be good to, like create like a grassroots, community and, get people's minds, to be like divided away from from the state.
Hey, Affrontal. Hey, Daniel. Sharp Mouth. Hey, Rika and Cap. Good to have you. Rika says, fellow New Yorker, poor guy. Yeah. And just as kind of the ever-present reminder, you're welcome to use the YouTube Super Chat feature, but remember that Google gets 30% of whatever you donate that direction. So when I forget to remind people of that at the beginning of the stream, I always feel bad later. The Super Chat Streamlabs link is at the top. That uses PayPal or direct credit card, and Google doesn't get 30% of your money. Anyway, so just wanted to get that out there. Yeah, so it sounds like you're trying to build more of like a covenant community, or are you just trying to get people in one place, like the Free State Project, or like what are you wanting to, what are you wanting to discuss? How can I help you?
I just want to find a proper way to, I guess, influence people better on libertarianism, right? And I want to use like whatever methods that are highly effective to try to get, that, I guess, like popular opinion going, to have people, like, I guess, the idea of trying to secede and create like a stateless society, right?
So you want to influence minds and change the world. That's not hard at all. So have you heard of Larkin Rose and his Candles in the Dark seminar?
I actually watch a lot of Larkin's content on YouTube.
So he does the Candles in the Dark seminar. I'm sure you've heard of it then. And he's been doing them live around the world, and recently he put it all online. So if you wanted to take in that content, it's accessible to you wherever you are. And I don't think it's that expensive. Maybe I think it's much cheaper than it was to actually go attend the class. But I think that's the best techniques that the general public should be aware of for changing minds and kind of waking people up to the basics of like reciprocal rights. Like, what do you think of, is there something the government does that you disapprove of, that you don't want government spending your money on? Well, there's literally no human alive that agrees with everything the government does with their money. And so you can kind of start there and work them through. Well, like, oh, that's terrible. I would, whatever it is, like fill in the blank. That's terrible. I would never support somebody forcibly robbing you to have your resources used in that way. And they're like, and then you're like, well, I afford you that courtesy. I have things that I would like to not have to pay for. Would you afford me that same respect in return? There's ways to kind of work with people like that. And Larkin talks, I think it's like 8 hours of content in the course about exactly how to do that without like raising people's mental barriers in the conversation, which is what most of us do by default when we get in these combative, debate style engagements with people that rarely change anybody's mind.
Yeah. And I just think like with the current political climate nationwide here in America, it's like, I just think like whenever you just have like a simple conversation, with anybody, depending on, I guess, like where you are, like for me, like in my neck of the woods, it just seems like nobody's out here actually having I guess like an intelligent conversation, and they just don't want the conversation because they find it very uncomfortable to their political views, and they just don't want to be corrected on something that they know that they're wrong in. Like,
well, let me just, I know I'm pimping Larkin's thing pretty hard, but it's because, look, I thought it was so useful that I put Disenthrall's resources, and Kaysen put Disenthrall's resources by producing the online version of that course, because it doesn't correct anyone. It is simply teaching people how to ask a series of questions about what they already believe, not even trying to change their belief, just through a series of like Socratic method questions, elicit from them what they believe, and you can question people into contradictions, and that is the most effective way to change anybody's mind on anything, is just by asking questions. I think we have some people in chat specifically that are familiar with that method and can probably back me up on that.
Yeah, I just personally think that if you bring up those like Socratic principles or methods, that would definitely get the ideas flowing a bit easier. But I think it would also be good to kind of challenge those beliefs in a sense to say like, hey, well, I understand that you probably like this type of idea, but how about we take a look at other ideas that were once tried that were way better in a more voluntaristic manner, and that could make people, think about something that's a lot more like sustainable and a lot more self-reliant. Like for example, like most people like don't know about this, but I guess I don't know if you probably heard of this thing that happened in America that people used to create. They were called friendly societies.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like for stuff like that, like most people won't know about it because like government education likes to teach you things that are not, I guess, like relative towards I guess like volunteers' point of view. But if you could get ideas like that to show to people that like if they want to have some form of like a mutual aid collectivist type of I guess a setup, point out to alternatives like that to say, if you really want a certain idea where everybody chips in, then, let's take a look at these solutions that may be helpful to you.
Patriotic in the comments says, yep, they will agree, but then they won't go further because they don't want the individual responsibility that is required to have individual liberty. I was just having a conversation at our volunteerist meetup last night about this. We have a local guy that has his own farm, and he's got, I don't know, I forgot how many he said, like 20 head of cattles. And, he has an electric fence around, and he says that when the new calves are born, they'll test the fence because they don't know any better. But as soon as they get zapped a few times, the entire rest of their life, they don't touch the fence anymore. And then when he goes out to feed or do something, I forgot what, but he'll go out in the field and he needs to keep the cows separated from him. He'll just run a thin rope across an area, and the cows just assume that is an electric fence, and they just don't touch it. And so this little tiny rope that he runs across his fields holds back like 20 massive creatures just because they have that belief that it'll zap them. And then we were talking about like, if cows had some kind of higher thinking like humans do, and they would maybe even without higher thinking, they can. They exist. They have an existence where they're protected and they're fed every day. And then for one of them to get, anarchistic and maybe buck the system or try and break out, outside even if they could, like even if they realized they could very easily just knock that fence over and get free, they're probably terrified of freedom because, out there they would have to fend for themselves. They would have to find their own food and they would have to defend themselves. So it's scary. Freedom is scary. And to Patriot Eek's point, that's definitely part of what, at least subconsciously, I think a lot of humans are very scared of being, taking on those risks and those responsibilities on their own, which is why government and the belief in authority is so insidious, because it's not actual protection. Like, you are no safer once you, like if I went back to believing in the just authority of government, it's not like I become safer. Like, government doesn't exist now. Even back when I believed in government, it still didn't exist. It still didn't provide safety and still didn't protect my rights. But the difference is, if you believe that there's something protecting your rights, you're actually leaving yourself defenseless in a way, because you're expecting somebody else to protect you so that you don't worry about protecting yourself in that way. So those are some of we always have some of the best conversations at these meetups, guys. If you're ever in the Dallas area, you should drop by. Really good talks. Did you have anything you wanted to say on that? Otherwise I'll go on down the comments.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's definitely but the reason why governments try to illusion themselves to exist, because so many people cannot, think of the idea of having a free voluntary society, because government education has, I guess mentally like conditioned people within that given geographic region, right? To make them believe that you cannot be free unless you have politicians. You cannot be free if you don't have laws that are monopolized by politicians. You cannot be free if you do not have wars created by political rulers to say, okay, America needs to exist, because if this wasn't America created by the founding tyrants that have ruled this land, then the Brits would come in, or the French would come in, all these warring states that were just as corrupt, but even way worse, would just, form a brand new state, which that's what I don't like out of current status that try to argue from that perspective, because they try to, they try to generally paint or broad brush everyone to say like humans are just naturally evil and humans will naturally just create a government. But it's like, how do you create a government? You can't show me government if until you show me people. So I think what the answer would be you don't trust bad people, but if you're going to create a government, wouldn't that be the worst thing possible to create? Because bad people will always rule government. There's no factual evidence to show that governments have, or more so politics has ever set anyone free. So why would you just keep doing something over and over and over and expect a different, expect a different result? That's just another brand of psychopathy.
Yeah, I did a video on this a couple years ago. I don't even remember the title of it now, but I basically talked about the cost of the wisdom lost on death. The short lifespan of humans leaves us perpetually ignorant of these long-term trends, like the ineffectiveness and the abuse of government and the lack of efficaciousness in participating in politics and voting. It's the way it works is you're born into a system. You spend the first 18 years of your life being indoctrinated to believe that voting is a viable method of achieving more freedom. And if you don't like something about the system, there are valid and effective ways of participating in it to make it into what you want it to be, or to make yourself more free. And then, so you're 18, you believe all this stuff. And then you set about spending the next 20 years of your life trying to participate in these systems, voting and paying attention to politics and being active in political debates and getting all wrapped up in the, two-party paradigm. And then maybe, by the time you're 50 or 60, you start to realize that all of that effort and time and frustration and feelings that you've put into it amounted to literally nothing. And you've spent, 20, 30 years of your life working on those methods that you were told were the right way to get things done. And so that lesson that you learn by the time you're 60, 50, 60, whatever, you might go looking for other ways, or by that point you're probably just tired and just want to live out the rest of your life in peace and not worry about being an activist anymore. And so it's kind of like the system, the indoctrination burns out of people the most active, energetic, portions of people's lives. Whereas, and then you die, and that wisdom is lost, and the kids, the next generation, kind of hit the reset button, and they're taught to try it again, or to keep trying, or that's the effective way. So it's as the people that know the reality of the uselessness of that stuff, by the time they learn that lesson, they're gone, and that wisdom is lost, and the next generation just starts it again. Daniel Westfall asks, Patrick, what method of activism have you found to be most effective? Long-term, playing the long game, it's parenting. So because parenting is how you make drastic changes to humans. If you parent differently, if you parent peacefully, if you parent non-authoritatively, if you don't create a statist government in your home where the parents are the state, then your kids will be in an environment where they will not expect such a thing to happen. So if you parent forcefully and authoritatively, then when your kids hit adulthood and you are no longer that authority in their lives, they're going to by default expect that authority to still exist somewhere. And it's it'll be a built-in subconscious need for that authority in their lives. So they expect and embrace government being that new authority. So just raising kids differently will create humans that don't have that expectation of an overarching authority in their lives. So long game, best activism to change the world, parent kids better, and to teach other people to parent kids better. And this is going to be my talk at Anarchapulco is, we always talk about peaceful parenting, don't beat your kids. Obviously that's bad. It's kind of like anarchy. It says what we don't want. We don't want force. We don't want coercion. We don't want to hurt people to get our way. But it doesn't talk much about what we do want, which is kind of the voluntarism side. So my talk at Anarchapulco is going to be kind of on that dichotomy. Like, we know what we don't want. We got peaceful parenting. Now let's talk about maybe, I don't really have a good word for it yet, principled parenting. Let's talk about what we do want. Let's talk about how to create an environment in our houses that rather than training humans to demand and expect and desire authority, let's teach them how to be free humans that stand up for themselves and think for themselves and say no when they don't want something, even if it's from their parent. Like when my kids say no to me, I'm like, yeah. It's like it's them exerting themselves. If you don't have the capacity to say no in a situation in your life, you are effectively being denied your existence. And so when my kids say no, it's like they're coming into being. They exist now. When they can say no and exert that control over themselves, God, it makes me proud. Anyway, so long game parenting, short game would be just having these conversations with people, very much in the same vein as Larkin Rose Candles in the Dark style is the most effective style. But just talking to people, just having polite, calm, rational discussions with people. And the less public the conversations are, the more effective they seem to be. Just chill, one-on-one, small group conversations with people where all you do is you say, look, you are coerced in a list of ways that I'm sure you can produce. I think that's wrong. I think that's immoral. I would never do that to you. And anybody that would is also immoral. Just basic, simple, calm conversations. Yeah. So did you have anything you wanted to say for that? I'm going to read on through these comments. Hey, Finian, I see you. I'm watching chat on Float this time. Last time I missed a whole lot of chat that was going on, including some donations. So I'm watching chat, Float's chat this time. So good to see you, Finian.
I was basically just about to say what you were going to say. I would probably say that the people that I deal with or that I've dealt with from like my family or from past friends that I used to have, they always bring up that same concept to say that there's no other way. You just have to deal with it. And, like humans are just basically subjected to have someone tell them what to do. And I find that to be very irrational and very inconsistent, because if humans are somehow built that way, why do we need people bashing other people with a big stick in order to become like better Samaritans for society? But that doesn't make any sense. You're going to get rid of violence by using violence, but using peace to get rid of violence, that's somehow even worse. No, even Amish people taught they teach their children how to be nonviolent, and they do perfectly fine. So, why can't everyone else just accept that fact that nonviolence is the way to go? And, that's actually the number one preference that most people would want to use in their day-to-day life, instead of, having to hurt someone just to get something that they want. And, I just think it's definitely due to bad parenting. I can definitely side with you on that. But I think it's a psychological issue too. I think it's due to all of the indoctrination spewed on the young. By the time when they get old, they're going to just automatically side with that information because it's easier to be ignorant than it is to be intelligent, which is much harder because you have to construct more logical arguments and you have to think philosophically and principally to understand, the outcome of that belief. So I think that psychological mindset is what holds people back, because they know that what you're explaining to them correctly is wrong, but they choose to be, in that in that mindset because they probably just don't see another possible way, because they've been brought up by that system of thinking to not think of any other possible alternative solutions.
Maynard James asks, how do you teach your kids to stand up to authority? That's a great question. I don't think I've ever set out to teach that lesson. I think it's like a default state of the human species I think by default you have self-ownership and you treat and you stand up for yourself and you say no. And I think that is what the school system is pretty much designed. Well, they said it was designed to beat that, not beat, but maybe, well, in the past beat, but to train that out of people, to indoctrinate that defiance to authority out. Like if you think about, for those of you that have had experience in public school, just how many of their daily habits are built around keeping you in line with authority. You stand in line, you walk in a line, you ask permission to pee, you sit at a desk and you can't get up and walk around and do whatever you want without permission. It's a permission culture from start to finish. Permission for everything. Did you ask for that? Do you have a permission slip for that? Do you have a hall pass for walking? I think that I guess to answer your question, I think the defiance to authority is built in. I think it's part of humans, and then I think it takes 18 years of training to get rid of that and to make people scared to assert themselves. I had a friend of mine that's been on the show before, and he's talked about this before. Like we were in a store together at one point, and the lady at the cash register was like, "Hey, I need your phone number for this transaction." I said, "No, thanks." And she's like, "Yeah, but I need it." I'm like, "No, thanks. You either want to sell me this or you don't. You don't need my information." Another time, you're walking out of a store like Walmart, or we have a Fry's Electronics here, and they have a person by the door that demands to check your receipt to make sure that you're not stealing anything. I walk by those people, and they're like, "Hey, I need to check your receipt." And I'm like, "No, thanks." And I just continue walking. It's just asserting your existence in the world, not to be an asshole. No thanks is a very powerful and yet polite phrase. It's a no and it's a thanks. It's like, hey, I'm not trying to be an ass, but no thanks. Like that comedian. He was walking the red carpet and some really famous chick came up, I forgot her name, and wanted to hug him, and he didn't recognize her or whatever, and he didn't want to hug this person that I guess was a stranger to him, and he was like, "No thanks," and she was like, but no thanks. And it's a powerful phrase that, I think most people should use more often. Just little things like that, I think are default. I think that's basic behavior, and I think that stuff is what the school system trains out of people. And then there are powerful examples of standing up to authority. Sorry, were you about to say something?
Oh, no. I was just basically listening. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's cool. So then there maybe are more like illustrative or powerful examples, and I'm going to probably give several of these in my Anarchapulco talk on this, because I think having a kid that is going through cancer treatments, and these treatments are almost universally unpleasant. Like there's nothing pleasant about the treatments for leukemia, and so by default the kid doesn't want to do any of it, and so it's a massive experiment and learning project for a parent that to try and convince to not order, to not control, to not demand that they take this medicine or do this treatment or lay down or sit there or allow the doctor to do whatever they want, but to have to debate and convince and talk through and negotiate constantly for every little step of the way through this treatment. It's been a massive learning project, and so I'm going to try and share some of that in this talk. But one example of standing up to authority is just, there are different types of authority, and the doctors, less so with, I think, children doctors, but pediatric doctors, but definitely normal adult doctors. They're used to being authoritative, and they're used to just having people defer to that authority constantly, especially in a hospital setting. And so, they'll swoop into a room and just begin doing whatever they wanted to do to my daughter sometimes. And so most parents, And they do this because most parents are on the side of the doctor. And so that's the dynamic they're used to. So they swoop into a room and they're like, hey, I'm going to do this. And they just begin doing it. And when the kid says, no, I don't want that, I object, they start crying, they don't like it. The parent immediately takes the side of the doctor, the authority figure, and says, no, you have to do this. No, we got to do this. We're going to do it. And eventually, if the kid continues protesting, the parent will just say, okay, well, let's just get it over with. Those are the words. Let's just get it done. Let's get it over with. That's the key phrase that gets used constantly. And that's basically telling the doctor to make it happen. And what that means is usually a nurse will come in and hold the kid down while they do whatever it is they need to do. And, you know, every time we're in clinic, we hear children having this done to them in the rooms next door to us, just screaming it without getting emotional or into it. But so the doctor then, you know, will swoop into our room and say, we're going to do this, this, and this. And Dagny will be like, no, I don't want that. And immediately we're like, okay, well, you know, can we talk about it? And the doctor will just begin doing it. And we'll be like, no, stop. We're going to talk through this and make sure that Dagny's okay with it first. Woo! Woo, those doctors aren't ready for that. Oh my God. They are not expecting us to be on the side of our children in those situations. And man, is that powerful. Man, is that relationship building. Like your kid knows that, like if that doctor continued doing what we told them, what my kid told them no, and what then I backed up and said no to, if that doctor were to continue doing it, Dad would handle the situation, if you know what I mean. Wow, is that powerful for the kid? So, yeah, I probably gave you a lot more than you bargained for with that answer, Maynard, but I hope that helped. Do you have any thoughts on that, Kieran?
Oh yeah, I was just about to basically relate to, I guess, like people in my family, like my grandfather. Like my grandfather, he used to serve in the military. He fought in I guess Bolivia during Pablo Escobar days. But like whenever he came back home, he was brought up by a very I guess like rough family. But his mother, she's actually pretty much the biggest influence on him. But when he was brought up, he had such a tough time, I guess, like interacting with his own family, because a lot of his family were, I guess, like abused a lot too. But that authority figure from the poor parenting alone had brought many other members within that family to basically just do the same thing, to not basically question and just accept, you know, what is being done to them. Because if they fight back, then that's just considered you being defiant. You know, you need to be scolded, and you know, you need to be ridiculed and disrespected because, you know, I'm your father or I'm your mother, and you're my child, so therefore you can't talk back. And I think, like, when it comes down to that, you know, dog eat dog mentality, it's really like very disturbing for those that are trying to, I guess, like, you know, battle their emotions. But with those emotions comes with a cost, and that cost brings a lot of, you know, destructive conflict that makes people not want to, you know, keep going, to say, no, I don't want to do this because, you know, I'm in control of my life and you can't tell me what to do because, you know, you're not really, you know, the boss of me. I'm actually being told what to do because, you know, I have no other choice but to do it. But if I wanted to go the other route to say, I don't want to be told what to do, then there would be, you know, worse consequences. And I think, you know, that's what but that's where you could see it today with children that have bad abusive parents, you know, like, you know, especially with young boys, especially, like, I say a good example of that would be the single motherhood with Black people. A lot of Black children, especially like 73% of them grow up without a father. But that number alone is a very big number, because when you do think about it, when those women try to take advantage of what the state give them all these freebies and stuff like that to basically divide away from, you know, the father figure, those boys don't have a father. And eventually, while they're being abused and tormented by the mothers that don't care about their well-being, they eventually turn into criminals. And it's been scientifically proven that when you keep abusing your children, they will grow up to become criminals. You know, I mean, like even like the worst political rulers, like Adolf Hitler, if he wasn't abused, he probably wouldn't be like the man he is today. But he was abused. He was beat by his mom and dad, and he has like a lot of psychological psychological problems. So I think like when it comes down to that, when you raise like your children bad, they're gonna turn into bad people, and you know that is at the root of those issues because children are like sponges. You know, they absorb that type of learning, and if you teach them how to just respect like authority and just think that violence will solve anything, you know, they're gonna just basically copy and paste what you told them, and that needs to stop.
Eric Goodlife asks, will you create a video on home or unschooling, something actionable, a course or consultation? Yes, absolutely. So what I've been brainstorming about is creating some kind of community, maybe on our Discord server, or maybe having its own Discord server for parents that want to learn about, like I said, principled or peaceful parenting, plus this kind of unschooling, homeschooling stuff. And so I don't have all the answers. I'm a new is kind of a weird, I've been doing it for years, but I wasn't raised with some of these principles by default, and I'm having to fill my toolbox. I'm having to invent these tools myself as I go. And so, as are most other parents, and it would be really useful to have a group of people that can share tips and can share tools for how to do all this different stuff. Like you said, actionable stuff. Because I remember when I first was exposed to the idea of peaceful parenting, and I was in the middle of trying to find a way to reject it. I was like, well, what does that actually mean? What does it actually look like? Tell me exactly how to handle this situation and that situation and that situation. So I understand the need for actual actionable knowledge, and it's hard to just sit down and because I've tried brainstorming videos like this. It's hard to create that content because it's almost like you need a prompt. You need somebody on the other side to be asking the questions that they're interested in so that you can spark the answers that people need to hear. So if you would like to come on the show, Eric, and talk through that might be a way more productive way of talking through that subject of home or unschooling with me, because rather than me just trying to imagine what people want to or need to know, you could actually sit down and have that talk with me, and that might be a really useful video. So, I try and keep it like we have Kieran here on the show today just because he reached out and asked if he could come on the show for a conversation. So you guys are all welcome to do that, and availability permitting, we will get it done. All right. ANCAP was spanked as a kid. I'm sorry for that, ANCAP. That's terrible. Graham Smith is a subject matter expert on unschooling, says Finian. Yes, he put out some videos on that a while back, and I think he was asking for donations for them, and then eventually made them free. So Graham Smith, Voluntary Japan, I think is his YouTube channel. You can look him up and find those videos. Maybe somebody can post a link to them in the comments. Shelley says yes, detailed subject, yes. Mm-hmm. All right. So do you have anything else, Kieran, that you'd like to talk about or discuss, or any questions for me now that we're here together talking?
Oh yeah, definitely. I just basically wanted to try to see what would be the best methods to achieve to achieve freedom. I was personally thinking about trying to kind of do what Cal did by trying to have face-to-face conversations with people, because I sort of do that today when I basically just talk to anybody, whether I'm taking a Uber or a Lyft, or just hanging out with friends, or just talking to people whenever I have free time. But I was probably thinking about maybe setting up some form of anarcho-capitalist chapter, right? By trying to talk to people about those ideas. And I want to kind of create a community, right? Basically recruit people to subscribe to that type of ideology. and try to build a grassroots, a support movement for it. And eventually, when there's, hypothetically speaking, a lot of people that support it, maybe that could be, what the very first spotlight to achieving a libertarian free market anarchy in Albany or vice versa, Philadelphia, or like wherever. So that's what I want to try to do in my own community, or probably somewhere else, like depending on like where I want to live and work on my career.
So I don't know if you saw my talk at last year's Anarchapulco, but it was on exactly what you're talking about, how to build a local group of voluntarists. And there's a link on our website, disenthrall.me/tribe, where you can find kind of the outline bullet point list of the talk, as well as I think there's a link here to the actual talk. If not, you can search my channel for it. But it's a 30-minute talk where I do a brain dump on what it takes to build an actual in-person, in real life group of voluntarists. A lot of lessons that were hard learned over the past several years of building one of the world's largest group of voluntarists here in Dallas. A lot of good information here. So anybody interested in building a local group of voluntarists, definitely I would recommend checking out that video and this webpage. And then I think, short of that, I think maybe a frontal in the comments probably is the one that I hear talking about this most. But, I think if you're looking to do this stuff in your lifetime, I don't know that we're going to have critical mass in our lifetime. I don't think that that's the case. And I'm also skeptical that we're going to be able to move the needle fast enough to actually, flip an existing area to into a sort of free society, in the kind of Free State Project model or whatever. I think there's a lot more promise for our lifetime style change by having people go to an area that is currently, like seasteading maybe, or to finding a place on the planet that isn't currently controlled by a government, and grouping people there and founding sort of a Gulch style, maybe Covenant style community where, the people that live there understand and agree to interact in a free way, in a mature way, because as people in the comments will probably tell you, like, most humans are just not there. They're not even mentally capable of, they're that cow that is scared of going outside the fence and what, the danger that might mean. And so rather than trying to take an area that's populated with those people and flip it, you probably a much higher chance of success to find a place that is currently not controlled and build something new there. Anarchy for Freedom, I see your chat over on the Float app. I'm watching the Float chat this time. Thank you for your $10 donation, sir. Keep up the awesome work. He says, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you as well. Unfortunately, donations over on Float don't do the cool pop-up animate thing because they're not wired into the Streamlabs and the Restream chat and stuff like that yet, but I am watching it now. I missed a lot of donations last time on that side, so thank you for your support. Yeah, do you have any thoughts on that, Kieran?
I was just about to say, like, in reference to, I guess, like the current political climate globally of like people not wanting to turn to anarchy. I do believe that there are those pockets of people that want to break away from the state, but I think the best way to kind of do it, in my view, is to definitely talk to people. I'm not a optimist, or like I don't think like things will just happen overnight. I do believe that this is a big project that needs to take a lot of support in order to achieve it. But I do believe that, like with anything else, if you want to achieve something, it's the little things first that will eventually evolve into bigger things. And I personally believe that the best way to do it is to basically talk to people. It's like advertising a brand new idea. Think about it. Like, Facebook wasn't a thing, but with the talks that people had about Facebook, now Facebook, like with anything else, if you want to achieve something, became Facebook became like one of the biggest platforms, but now Facebook is basically dying out. But like you get what I'm saying? Like, if you get that good like 10% population to accept that idea, it's going to cause a chain reaction, and people will start to support it more because that spotlight will be shown to show like what the actual ideas proposed are executed in real life. So I think that's what needs to be shown more. There needs to be more exposure of how the state operates versus how humans operate without the state. And once those ideas are presented more to expose those lies of what the state has taught those people for years, I think, that like those ideas will start to be, I guess, like praised more to achieve, freedom a lot quicker.
And the good news is, like, I've very rarely had somebody that I thought was understood and was convinced of the basic, live and let live of voluntarism, go back on that or change their mind or return to statism. Usually it's, like the people that come to voluntarism for pragmatic purposes are the ones that will probably not stick around because they're not really guided by right and wrong. They're guided by what they think will work best for themselves, like utilitarian type people. Richard says, then I request to be a guest calling your show. So if you'd like to have a conversation with me, you can reach out to me on just about any of the platforms, Facebook or Discord. Just send me a private message, saying, hey, I'd like to be on the show to discuss XYZ, and we can get you scheduled whenever that'll work. So, Richard, you're welcome to reach out for that. What was I saying? I interrupted myself. Oh, no. Yeah, I lost it. Damn it. What were we talking about? I lost it.
I think that we were talking about I basically was just talking about how like achieving freedom could be done, but it basically like requires a large population to actually accept those ideas.
The second part of what I was going to say was that, and the other good news is that it's kind of an exponential effect. So if every person watching this video right now helped expose one new person, create one new voluntarist a year, then in 20 years the world's free. Like if 30 people watching now created 30 voluntarists, next year you have 60, which will create another 60. The next year you have 120, 240. It'll add up pretty quick. So I think everybody should have that goal of at least like one new voluntarist a year. I think that's a great goal, and then we're looking at 20 to 40 years probably. So somewhere in there. If all the current voluntarists created one new a year, we're going to hit a threshold. We're going to hit critical mass a lot faster. And I keep pimping it, but if you don't know how to do that, if you want to learn how to do that, the best resource out there is the Candles in the Dark seminar.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I do believe it can be done, but it's just the level of exposure that people don't get to see, because a lot of people are or have been brought up by state indoctrination. So it's like people don't think every day like, oh, well, let me take a look at something different, and maybe I might be convinced, but I think it's honestly the level of exposure, because like nobody from North Korea would want to watch something on libertarianism, because Kim Jong-un's political structure would prevent that. But versus from someone from like, let's just say Norway, of course they have more access to look into that, because they're more economically free, but more people are okay with actually, accepting that type of information out there. But it still doesn't exclude, the people from the worst countries to actually look into that, because, ideas will come about and eventually people will embrace it. Soviet Russia did not last forever, but, take a look at how Russia looked like 100 years ago versus Russia today. So if you kind of get that mindset here in America, not even on a nationwide level, just do it in a community level where, let's just say Albany, people here in Albany actually like the idea of libertarianism. And if you got, a good couple thousand people here in Albany to break away from the state, similar to like what people did out in Detroit, where 47% of property owners stopped paying their property taxes. If you could get something like that, anywhere, that would be awesome. That, like, doing stuff like that would scare governments, and that would really cause a very huge political, like, twist on how people think. And if that is practiced more, where people disobey and say, hey, like, we're done with this. This is our property. This is our people. This is what a real society should look like. Don't hurt, don't steal, don't rape, don't murder. If you got those things universalized and more people to support it, that will definitely cause a big change in people's, I guess, like, way of thinking.
To some of the people are talking about Spooner in his book in the comments, and I have a list of audiobooks that I'm going to produce, over the next several years. And right now I'm working on, I just finished Larkin Rose's Candles in the Dark, Most Dangerous Superstition. Now I'm working on Walter Block's Defending the Undefendable 2. And I think the next one after that will probably be Spooner's Constitution of No Authority, because that is such a powerful, that was instrumental in me waking up, just realizing this document that everybody had so much faith in was like literally invalid and self-contradictory and consented to only by a tiny majority of the population, even back when those people were alive doing such things. So that's a good one. Maynard James says, I'm hopeful that enough people will become crypto anarchists, that it will starve the beast. If people have a proven way to subvert laws, regulations, and taxes anonymously, then they probably will. I am skeptical. And if you want to come on the show and have a conversation on this, I want to be wrong in this area, but I am skeptical of cryptocurrencies' godlike powers to defeat or end the state. Now, subvert it, sure, in small ways around the edges. Conduct small transactions around the on the outside, in the black market, whatever. Yes, I agree. So long as the state allows it to continue existing and being a thing. Now, I know everybody that knows anything about crypto just heard me say the state allows crypto to exist. Is probably shrieking in the comments and in their head, and they're yelling at me right now. I think most people, I'm in IT. I've done info security work. I'm pretty familiar with what I'm talking about, and I'm also pretty confident that government has the tools and means to effectively censor enough of cryptocurrency communication to make it effectively useless or effectively unusable to the general public. Like, will they be able to erase it and block it completely? Absolutely not, because when it comes down to it, you could print out QR codes and, trade information over citizen band radio or whatever, So like you absolutely wouldn't be able to kill it completely, but it wouldn't take much effort with the amount of access to control the major providers to block a great deal of the communication of this stuff from enough of the general public to make it not really adoptable. To make it'll be something that only gets used by the super nerds that are familiar and aware to use it securely and privately enough to not get busted, and everyone else will get sent to jail or get blocked entirely, to the point where its value drops to the point where it's less adoptable. That's kind of my skepticism with that. Like, they underestimate the government's power to control the internet, I think. Well, anyway, I'll leave it at that and let some people rage at me if they want. And if you disagree strongly on that or want to have that conversation with me, come on the show. We can do that. Do you have any thoughts, Kieran?
Yeah, I actually was just about to say something about that, because I am a big supporter of agorism. I don't see it to be like the end all be all, but I think it would definitely put a huge number on the state, as if a good amount of people actually traded in cryptocurrency. Like, I'll just keep it to that standard, but that would definitely be pretty good, because eventually when people start to see the value of decentralized currencies, that would probably trade off to different demands of what people would want. And let's just say if cryptocurrencies weren't really that effective, that would want to make people to I guess invest in a more expansive black market to create newer alternatives to trade easier through maybe digitalized currency, or probably something similar to maybe I don't know, maybe use certain coins to represent certain I guess businesses, right, to trade for certain I don't even know what to say, because I guess like prior to 1913 there was competing currencies. So if you had something similar to that, that would be pretty good, and people can alternate different payment methods to keep certain ideas balanced, and people can compete for newer I guess methods of expanding their trade and bringing newer ideas to not keep things I guess stale or out of balance, right?
Yeah, I think Finian nailed it in the comments. He says, yes, the main problem is the crypto to fiat window. Governments control that window. They can close it anytime they want to. Almost worse than that, they also, they control the corporate window. So if I want to run a business and accept fiat currency and the government says I can't, then, you lose your business license. And if you continue doing business, then you're in prison. So unless you're just end to end black market, unless you're buying from somebody on the black market, in a black market way, end to end, fully encrypted, which most people don't want to do that. The average person is not interested in those kinds of risks to their personal freedom, as well as to their personal safety, and just dealing in the black market is a lot more risky than walking into a store and buying something. So they control your ability to buy into and out of crypto, and they also control most of the entities that you want to buy things from. You can't pay your electricity bill in crypto if the government outlaws crypto. Because the electric company would have to stop accepting crypto, otherwise they get they lose their business license and they become black, and they're black market overnight. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more barriers to crypto than I think people want there to be, or think about sometimes. That's not to say I'm not a huge supporter, and I don't think it's amazing. And I've been an investor into crypto for a long time. I created a bot that functioned on Poloniex to do automated loan exchanges. So I've had companies in the crypto space. So it's not that I'm not a proponent of it. I'm just I'm more cautious. And I'd like to think a little more realistic on the power of government to beat the hell out of it at the time of their choosing than a lot of people are.
Yeah. I was also going to say...
yeah, go ahead.
I was also going to say I'm actually planning on trying to work towards a career of being a video game developer. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to create a black market of my own to try to get people to trade within that market of indie or whatever type of games that they wanted. But how I would do it is that I would allow competing cryptocurrencies and other currencies of trade, whether that be gold or silver, through a peer-to-peer network. But that would be kind of regulated in the sense that whatever you wanted in that market, it would have to be consensual, and there would have to be a set standard of what is being put out there for business. But I wanted to kind of influence it where if you wanted to become your own producer, go for it, and that should encourage other people to do the same. And people should create crowdfunding groups to support those people if they're worthy enough to actually put their ideas out in that market to become a better, competitor to other producers in that field.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So basically, I want to create a gaming company to beat out the corporatist firms that are destroying the gaming industry. But I want to decentralize that population to get people motivated to say, hey, if you got a better idea that's better than, let's just say, Mortal Kombat, go for it. Let's create crowdfunding groups to support those people and the developing team and whoever to make better ideas to outbest the original ideas made by the Mortal Kombat team, instead of just saying, well, just support us and in this white market where we don't have that many legal rights to that ideas, right, because of licensing laws and stuff like that, and it makes it harder for that business to beat out companies like NetherRealm Studios and vice versa, because you don't have the economic freedom to come up with a different idea to beat them out and go for something different. But that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, the gaming conglomerates could definitely use some competition. It's a pretty extensive dumpster fire at this point. Like, I don't know of a single game company, a game developer that I am a fan of at this point. They're all SJW semi-Marxist garbage. Yeah. Finian nails it again. Agorism-wise, we do more damage bartering skills and goods using cash, precious metals. Yeah, the most successful agorism I have done is just simply asking people for cash prices on things when they do work for me. So like if they work on the house, if I need AC work, I'm like, hey, what's the cash price on that? So that neither of us have to pay taxes. Maybe we can both save a little money. Just simple stuff like that gets a long way, and cryptocurrency doesn't come into play even, right? So cash is still king in its own way. All right, sir. Kieran, do you have anything else that you'd like to talk with me about today?
Oh yeah. I got more stuff to basically ask you. I wanted to basically just see as far as the political climate here in America, where do you think, I guess, the current future of American, I guess, livelihood would lead to if people keep putting their faith into the state more and keep surrendering their freedoms? What would be the best method to subvert the state in your day-to-day life?
That's a very personal question, and I don't mean personal in that you shouldn't ask me something so personal. I mean that's personal in that everybody has to draw their own line and their own conclusion and their own answer to that question. So I know people that I respect a lot that choose to construct their life in a way that they're very off grid. They might not even have an official address, and a lot of what they do is off the books, and they're happy in that state of being, and that makes them that is their freedom, is the way to put it. That is their freedom. I love IT, information technology. I love being an entrepreneur and starting new ventures and fighting in the free market for businesses. That requires me to participate. Participate's the wrong word. That subjects me to a lot more state intrusion, control, and taxation than my more off the grid friends. But that is my freedom. Does that make sense? If what makes me happy is competing in business, and that puts me in a place where I get robbed more, that is a choice that I've made, because the competing in business is if I were free, that's what I would be doing. And so the closest thing to freedom for me is that. And so I made a video on tax victim blaming for people that they twist the words. They have the concepts reversed, and they blame people for participating in ways that get them taxed more. They'll say people that say pay taxes. That's a dumb word. I think I'm going to do videos coming up soon where people can link. I want to make a bunch of a series of videos about these common phrases that people use, and call them dumb words, and just make them really short 60-second videos. So as you're participating and chatting with people across the internet, and they use a dumb word. You can drop a link to the video. But taxpayer, paying taxes is one of those dumb words. Like, no one pays taxes.
Yeah.
And if my freedom and my happiness comes from a career in technology that subjects me to more taxation, that's not me condoning, participating, or assisting the government in doing evil with resources that it robs me of. Like, that inverts the morality of the situation. So I guess the summary is like, your atoms in the universe have clumped together and will stay clumped together for a very brief time in the history of the universe. And so you have a brief moment, you have a flash in the pan to be sentient and aware and to control yourself and to, make yourself happy. And so I'm not going to be sitting here telling people how they need to construct their life. I think you need to be as happy as you can while your atoms are stuck together. Put yourself in a place that makes you happy. And if that's in the middle of the forest, big igloo style, man on the land, off the grid, then please, dude, do that. If constructing your life such that you pay precisely zero taxes, see, I just did it. Dumb word. Damn it. If you construct your life in such a way that you are extorted precisely zero, then please, man, if that makes you happy, please do that. And I'll even be proud of you for achieving that, because that isn't easy. And if on the other hand, your freedom and what makes you happy with the brief time that your atoms are stuck together is something, I'm just saying, be happy. And making that choice for yourself, being your own agent and making these choices is part of freedom. And so how to achieve freedom today in the short term is to do picture yourself in a free society, in a free scenario, and then get as close as you can to that today. With the cost benefit and risk reward calculations done to a degree that you are most comfortable with. Did that answer your question? If not, tell me.
I mean, yeah, definitely. Like I personally, still have these talks with people about just certain issues that they're concerned with, whether it be economic or social. But I still apply those principles of non-aggression, body ownership, and other philosophical ideas that gets people's minds thinking. And I think, to my point of view, that that's effective, because if I actually bring it to a bigger crowd and they actually start to see the truth over the ignorance, then that will shine a light, and eventually more people will be recruited to those ideas. So I just keep doing what I have to do, but I want to be successful at the same time by becoming a good motivational influencer to those ideas, because I do believe that, granted, I can't do everything in one day. I can't get everything done as one person, but I do know that one person can really make a huge difference. And if you bring those ideas to beat out those differences, that will definitely cause a chain reaction. And that's what I plan to do in my career. Like, I want to get big into the gaming industry, but I want to bring my ideas to educate people, to show them, like, hey, even though that I got up here, I want you to be up there with me. And hey, maybe one day, we can all be there. We can all be chilling at Mars, partying, having a bunch of Mars beers. Like, I don't know, but can we definitely think of that possible reality 1,000 years later? That would be awesome. I would love to make video games that talks about what would happen if that future could happen. But if I can just keep bringing out those little things to evolve into big things, I think my ideas will be, championed one day. And people will look at me just like what they did with Lysander Spooner, Milton Friedman, David Freeman, everyone. Nonviolence is definitely the way to go, but it's also getting, connected with the people that you care about, that will look at you as like a positive influence to the world. So that's what I plan to do, to achieve freedom in that sense, but I won't stop until I die. I'm not going to, bow down to the ruling class. I will keep fighting until I die, and I'll keep doing it, as long as I can, until I can't stop breathing, or until I stop breathing.
Well, and I hope that process makes you happy as well. Because I think the closest answer to the meaning of life is to use the time that you have to be as happy as you can. And your atoms are, like I said, your atoms are stuck together, glued together for a brief little window of time. So make sure that whatever you're doing, even as an activist, gives you some happiness along the way.
Yeah.
Luckily, humans seem to be wired such that, being virtuous in the face of opposition to that virtue brings pretty strong happiness. So like the more you adhere to principles in the face of opposition, the more happiness you tend to get out of that struggle. So, luckily happiness is lined up with activism in a pretty coincidental way, but.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Yes, Rika, put $1 in the dum-dum jar. Yes, yep. All right, guys. Do you have anything else? This is your time, man. Use it how you'd like.
Yeah. I really wanted to try to possibly ask you that event that you throw in your community called the Feed the Need thing. I was trying to think about doing something similar out here, where I could probably do maybe clothe or help I guess the homeless type thing. But I'm in fear of having to deal with state agents because I'm in New York. It's a very communist driven area. But I wanted to try to see how can people like myself implement those type of projects where I can definitely get that grassroots community going, because I think doing stuff like that would definitely undermine the state's control.
In the People's Republic of New York, man. What's the status of gun control there? Nothing is allowed, right? I don't know. I'm not familiar.
New York State, as far as living in Albany or any of those counties, you can have a gun, but it needs to be permitted by the police department, which is really stupid. But to get a pistol permit, that's almost 6 months to a year, depending on what county that you live in. So if you're in Saratoga, good luck. But that's very difficult. Versus probably being somewhere out in I guess at the middle of nowhere, Schoharie County, you could probably get it, but that's why so many people don't want to go through that, because a lot of people realize that, wait a minute, if I have to wait for these blue costume psychopaths to approve this permit for me to get a gun at a store, then what's the point of me putting in that application if I know that I'm waiting in line it's a communist red line with so many people just to get me a firearm? So maybe that's why so many people just illegally buy it, because they know, look, even if I do get put in custody for something that I try to do rightfully so to defend myself, I'm not going to wait for the basically for the police officers to come to my house when I'm in danger of dealing with people that broke into my house, So just for those policies alone, that really does affect a lot of people's lives. But yeah, getting a gun here in New York, and especially in New York City, it's very difficult. It's so bad that it's probably easier getting a water gun than it is getting yourself a pistol.
So let me try and break this down, and I don't think I've ever really done this. First of all, the inventor of the Feed the Need event was a group of people called Don't Comply, which I have been graciously allowed to, I guess, become a member of. But I mean, I promote the hell out of them because it's one of the most powerful street activism that I've ever seen, much less been a part of. Like I would travel across the country to attend and be a part of this event because it is such a powerful, it's a powerful message and it's a powerful work of charity. Anyway, so I've never really tried to break down the formula, but I've definitely tried to learn it to see if it can be duplicated because it is such a powerful thing. And it starts with finding, and this should be easy in New York, it starts by finding a law that makes an activity illegal, and that activity needs to be unquestionably, universally, in every single human's minds that you find, it's got to be that activity has to be not only neutral and okay, but it's got to be virtuous and kind and, you know, like an act of charity. So if you can find like an act of just utter selfless charity that is in some way illegal in the place that you live, you know, something that no one would say, oh, well, you shouldn't be doing that without permission. You know, like just like feeding the homeless is a perfect example. Like no one that you talk to in Texas will be like, what? You shouldn't be feeding people that are hungry on the streets in winter. You're like, it's just, people don't say that. It's a stupid thing to say. So you find something like that. That is illegal. So that is your point of resistance. That is the crux of the entire thing. That is the lever that you're going to be pulling to like show people that the government is doing something evil, and this is what good people should do in response to that, right? And then like the next part, the weapons in being in New York, well, like that's going to take it up a notch. That's going to take it to a different level, right? So like just define. So like if you got a group of people together and you broke whatever law it was without guns in New York, you probably know how that's going to go down, right? Yeah. The police are going to come and the regulators are going to come and there will be fines and jail time and whatever, whatever happens, whatever. The last ingredient in the equation for this type of event is the group size. So if you've got 5 guys in Dallas going out and feeding the homeless in such a loud way that we do, that is a much tastier, simpler target for the state. But if you have 100 people going out and doing it, that's harder. That's another level for them. That's going to require a bigger act of violent response from the government's part than just 5 people. So group size is critical as well. And then when you add weapons to that in Texas, that's kind of like the clincher. That's not only the message you're sending the public, but that's also how you protect your group of people that would otherwise, be accosted or violently controlled by people with guns. But the cost benefit in New York for something like that, I don't even want to comment or make a recommendation on because I'm not familiar enough with how that works where you are. That's something you'd have to figure out. Like if you had 100 armed people feeding the homeless, assuming that's illegal in New York, I have no idea. What would the police response be? Because the whole thing is like publicity management. It's image management. So like the headline in Dallas would be cops, cops get in shootout with people trying to feed the homeless in Dallas. That's the headline that you get out of that event. The cops don't want that headline, right? So crafting the event such that the publicity and the public image of what their response would be is so bad for them that they leave you alone. That's what it comes down to. They leave you, like in Dallas, we've had people even call the cops and be like, hey, guess what we're going to be doing on this day and this time? We dare you to show up, and they don't. And they pretend and they don't acknowledge that we're doing it. And if asked, they'll probably say they weren't aware of it. Because if they were aware of it, then they would kind of be bound to enforce the laws. So it's much easier for them to just overlook it and to just happen to not show up in that place that day. And that's the best case. That's the best case scenario because it lets you teach the lesson to the public that, look, when you do things that are good that the government says are bad, and you do it in a way that, you can defend yourself, it's like you teach people. It's like the teachables. It's like a cartoon episode of here's how resisting government for dummies. Like it's the entire equation. The government has an evil law. The government will use force on peaceful people to control them, to enforce that law. And here is how you respond to that. You get a large number of people, you arm them so that they can defend themselves, and then you go out into the world and you do purely good things. That's the equation end to end. Now, if that would work in New York, I don't know.
Yeah.
I would be scared.
Yeah, like I would definitely do it if I had a lot of people that were of that mentality to break the law and get away with it. But I just think like with political, corruption from especially politicians that would like to just take advantage of that, try to find a way to just get you arrested. I just think think of like basically like the long term of like what would people think about me, knowing that I'm actually doing something that's really good, but in their view they would just look at me as like a bad person. And I would definitely do it, but I would definitely need to have like a huge army of people to support me on that. And if I could get it done where I could illegally break these laws, and I could definitely have a whole group of people to defend each other if police were trying to, take each other out or basically take us out, one by one. That's definitely doable. I would definitely go out and start recruiting people to help feed the homeless or do something similar of that to definitely get people's mindset change. And eventually people would want to do it themselves too. And then boom, you got a chain reaction, but the state's not going to touch you. And that's just going to keep evolving. And I would, I'm sorry. I would like to do it, but it's just trying to get those people together first. And then I'll think about actually, being serious to be like, look, if you're going to come at me with guns, I'll be ready with my group to fight you off if that happens.
Well, the network with the statist 2A groups in the area, if that even exists in New York, and they're going to. Not only is that the low-hanging fruit for the point of the event, like, hey, the government's doing evil. I know you think the government is valid, but we can at least join forces to resist it in this way because we both understand that, let's say, feeding the homeless is immoral. But that'll get the people that understand the Second Amendment at least more than the general public, and those groups are usually a lot larger, obviously, than any voluntarist group in the area would be. So a lot of the people that show up to Feed the Need are statists, 2A folks, so. And that's fine because they're not only are they exposing them, not only are they flexing the muscle that resists tyranny, which is good for anybody, regardless if you're a statist or not, but it gets them out and they rub elbows with the people that can actually talk about voluntarism and say, hey, all the other stuff the government does is also immoral and also deserves some resistance, and just rubbing those two groups together, so to speak. Is usually a good thing as long as people are like everybody's there to help the homeless. So everybody, it is about helping the homeless. That's the important thing. It's the number one goal is helping people. The goal is helping people. It's not to have a big show of force against a showdown with the cops. That's literally not the main goal. The main goal is to actually help people. And there's all this secondary stuff that comes after that. So, so when I'm standing next to a statist at Feed the Need, we're both there for one primary thing. We're there to help people. And we're also there to protect each other in case the government decides to make helping people a thing that they want to attack us for. So that is important. Phobes in the comments says they do show up. They steal the fucking tents and sleeping bags. Cowards. Yes.
That's what I was just about to say. I'm
assuming that an hour and 26 minutes into the stream, the Dallas police are no longer watching the stream, so I will say that we are investigating the group of people that... wow, we got a bunch of follows on Mixer. We've been investigating the group or the organization the City of Dallas organization that does the homeless robbing every week. and we're narrowing down when they do it, and we're narrowing down who does it, and we're narrowing down where they do it. And there might be a plan for us to go out and be homeless people that they will attempt to rob and get it on camera, and you know, maybe have some means of self-defense to teach some lessons. So there's some things that we have in the works. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Well, anything else? I know I keep asking that, but yeah, I'm happy to keep talking if you have more stuff that you'd like to talk about.
Oh yeah, I was just about to say, like, I even see a lot of groups here in New York, per se, that try to do helpful things, but it's like, it seems like that when they do try to help out, it's not enough because of the state gives out certain limitations of what they can do, and it gets people pretty upset with like certain things that needs to be done, and you know, to that standard, it makes people, you know, furious and annoyed that when they do say something that they want done in the community, it never gets done, because obviously when the government gets involved, you know, with anything, you know, especially a political organization, you know, nothing gets done. But then for groups like yourself, if that were, I guess, like championed more, that would be super easy to expand that to other groups as well. Like, let's just say, you know, there was groups that actually voluntarily went out to fix out potholes for roads. That would be insane. That would create such a massive population of people to be like, yo, these people are actually voluntarily breaking the law to fix up crappy roads, but they actually do care about these roads. So if that was expanded to other areas where a market can easily take that over, I think that would definitely get people's minds going to, you know, to basically stop thinking that what the state will always come in and fix it, knowing that it's absolutely garbage. And that will make people think to be more independent and more self-reliant instead of having to depend by someone else, such as a third-party middleman, always bringing a gun to fix problems.
I'm looking up an article that you made me think of on the Wall Street Journal. I'm probably not even going to be able to read it because they probably have a paywall. Actually, I think somebody sent me a PDF copy of this. Let me see if I can locate that really quickly. I mean, this is everything wrong with everything right now. Is self-reliance a mental illness? Oh my God.
I saw something similar to that where a guy made an article talking about why libertarianism is a mental illness. And like, he basically called, you know, certain like libertarians who are like, I guess like radical libertarians, like they would, like, he basically labeled those people to be like mentally ill, and they're like basically like the brand new version of communism. He basically went to that point to say like libertarians who really love freedom and liberty, they're just basically modern day communists 2.0.
Them bitch ass roads. Fuck.
Yeah, oh, no. yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. How fuck
what did it stop? Oh no! We've got him frozen on the screen now. What happened?
Fuck
Eric July, what happened to you? Okay, there he goes.
Them bitch ass roads. Fuck them hoe ass roads, man. Fuck them hoe ass
roads. Yeah, man.
This is level 1 shit.
Pretty much. It's level 1.
I've been waiting to use those.
This is level 1 shit.
Even Domino's had a commercial saying that they'll help build roads. So if you put that principle together, like, that would easily change, you know, people's minds that quick. Just having like certain advertisements like that will get people's, you know, ideas flowing a lot quicker. A lot quicker. I personally want to do something similar to that. Just create certain grassroots ideas and eventually build it to a bigger audience, you know?
Oh man, yeah. So the PDF of that article, somebody shared it to the Discord server. I'll have to scroll up and find it. Or if anybody's listening that posted that, maybe you could post it to the Discord server again. And anybody that wants to check it out, I was thinking about doing a video on that. It's just so insane to equate self-reliance with being mentally ill is just, it's everything wrong with the world right now. It's just they want you to be utterly dependent on all of their machinations. They want you to be dependent on government for everything, and self-reliance is the only escape from that. So yeah.
How many times is it that we say we oppose taxation, and the first goddamn level 1 rookie childish kindergarten ass argument that you throw out there is, what about the roads? You somehow think that the thing that's gonna stump us and be like, damn, fuck this libertarian shit is the motherfucking roads. Damn. I need to get over there. What if we built a goddamn flat space? Them bitch ass roads. Fuck them hoe ass roads, man.
Oh God, I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, Eric, he's a G, man. Yeah, he's a freedom fighter. He is just like, he's just tier number 5. Like, don't mess with him. He's like one of my favorite YouTubers.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was gonna say, like, I've been at times where I've argued with statists, and I tell them, like, literally, like, you realize everything that government has taken control. They always do a crappy job, especially like just even on issues like when it comes to healthcare, roads, even just simple things, like postal service, anything, you know, like government is just simply just a small group of people holding a monopoly on arbitration to restrict people's freedoms to do things what people can't do in power. That's basically the whole nature of the state. And if
Yo, my name is Eric July.
Sorry, I was pulling up Eric's channel.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No. But I just find it very funny how statists will make the exception of how government operates better than a competitive market, and then they come up with all these crazy straw mans and say, oh well, if the government never controlled this, and you would have to be paying way more money on you driving on a road, yada yada yada, or if you had your own, you know, postal service that you subscribe to, or if you had your own security, you know, your security will probably turn up against you if somebody tries to buy them out. And like, but they always go to those crazy like I guess like whataboutism tangents to try to make you feel like that you're stupid for having a differences of how you want to run your life, and they try to make it seem like that's what would happen if there was no, I guess, like monopoly on those ideas, right? So they attack your character rather than attacking the actual argument. And that's what pisses me off at the most, because that's not a valid argument. You can't just say that, okay, well, once the monopoly on currency is actually destroyed, everyone would just basically let's screw each other over with their own currency. No. People would compete with their own currency, and if it's good, it's good. Like, nobody didn't cry when Blockbuster was gone, right? So just imagine that with Bitcoin, with gold, pandemonium, plutonium, everything that the earth has, it could be valuable. So that's why you have a market, competitive, free from the state's oppression, or just basically a third-party violent arbiter to let consensual human beings decide what is right for society. Quit pointing guns at other people to basically get what you want. I don't know.
Here's something random out of nowhere, and let's make it like a poll for the comments. Okay, so last night I had a conversation with people with people at the meetup, and they were putting out the proposition that the people at the top, the sort of shadowy figures that, you know, run the world from behind the scenes or whatever, they're the ones, you know, providing these financial support for these Marxist organizations, or for, you know, organizations that support, let's say, the transgender activism, or the, you know, like just this far left sort of Marxist cultural changing organizations. They're getting their funding from these shadowy figures that sort of run the world. And the question is, and so let's vote number 1 or number 2 in the comments, and And Kieran, you can respond as well. But number one, put number one in the chat if you think that the people, funding these Marxist, cultural change organizations are doing it so that they can sort of keep the plebs mixed up and confused and fighting amongst themselves so that they can run off with all the money and power. Or number two in the chat, if you think that they're genuinely mostly leftist Marxist types and they're doing it because they actually believe in and think that these cultural changes, cultural initiatives are the right thing to do in the direction to go. And maybe a number three if it's neither, and put why you think it might be different. And once we kind of aggregate the responses, I have some questions. So what do you think, Kieran?
I think, honestly, it's definitely I'll probably go with number one, because people that want power, they're going to get what they want. And if there was no such thing as a Adolf Hitler to come in and get what he wanted, then there would be no Adolf Hitler. So, like any other, person that's a psychopath, that's your everyday criminal, he wants to try to get as much as he wants before he gets exposed for who he is. And he'll do anything in his way to lie, cheat, and steal to achieve his goals. And I think that when it really comes down to it, when you have to keep creating new lies, new abstract terms to get people's minds, checked out, that's when you have to create new propaganda for it in order to get those minds to side with you, inadvertently, because that's how you have to do it. Because if you don't, and if you were actually honest about what you believe in, then the average person would not want to support you. So I think the only way for that to be achievable is by constantly lying and creating new, abstract terms to get people to not believe everything that's true about you, but to get at least a large enough population that's duped out to say, well, I'll still like you for what you say, but I'm not going to understand, what you truly believe in, because you sold me on something that I don't know a lot about. So I think that's really how it goes down. Especially I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just about to finalize to say, especially when you kind of see it with just certain institutions like the schooling system. Why is it that you see all these teachers that always complain about wanting more higher pay, but yet there's so many crappy teachers out there that don't deserve, a higher paycheck? Well, it's because that these teachers that are in these certain school structures, they're probably selected by the Board of Education or whoever to favoritize certain positions for those people. That's why when you see all these cases of these teachers doing all these crazy things, there's no incentive, there's no accountability for them. But, let's just say if Walmart was in control of that, these Walmart teachers would be taken down, there is accountability in the market versus for what the state does. It's absolutely garbage. And people blindly follow that, cult of personality or crab mentality to just think well, it's just there and I sort of benefit from it. So I'm just going to keep letting these bad things happen because at least my kids are going to school for free, right? It doesn't make any sense.
So I didn't get a single number two. Everyone said number one. And so isn't it the more simple position, like Occam's razor? Wouldn't it be more of a simple explanation to think that, they were genuine in their far left terrible Marxist beliefs, and so they were just simply putting their money behind their beliefs? Isn't that the more simple position to hold, rather than assuming that they're some kind of nefarious mastermind of populist manipulation? What are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, when it comes down to it, I always see it from any bad criminal. The criminal will do whatever he or she wants to do as long as they're not exposed for what they're doing. And I think bad people that want to get away with the worst things possible, they have to do a lot of, hideous things, behind closed doors in order to keep their image popular. Especially especially with politicians too. They really like to lie a lot to keep their image clean. And until they actually get exposed for what they do, they're not even talked about. And I guess a good example of that would probably be Hillary Clinton, right? She really tries so hard to keep her image together, but after so many years of exposure, it's she's not really talked about anymore. And it's people, still try to give her that complacency to say, well, we sort of like you, but we still keep a minor, a minor relationship with you to somewhat trust you, but at the end of the day, you're still a psycho piece of shit. But if that was universally principled to say, no, we do not want the Hillary Clintons of the world walking around here telling people all these bad ideas, then no, nobody would ever want to talk to people like that anymore. So I think it's a psychological problem in that sense, to keep the criminality exposure low and to try to blind people's image of what they think of that person in their day-to-day life.
What about you guys in chat? Why did you? It seems like you're when you chose number one, you're rejecting maybe the more simple explanation over the more conspiratorial, nefarious one. I'm just curious. I tend to apply Occam's razor, and I'm just well, it seems more simple to believe that they're genuinely Marxist rather than disingenuously supporting Marxists to maintain power. Maybe I'm being dumb again. So I have about 15 minutes left, Kiernan. So if you have anything else you'd like to talk about, let's. Oh
yeah. I just wanted to ask you, in reference to communism, do you think that most of statism is pretty much influenced by communism? Because it does seem like that. With every state that's been formed, communism has been pretty responsible for most of those corruptive failures of failed states and current ones.
It's hard to argue that without a communist in the conversation, because I think you have to define communism, and I will define it more broadly than they would. They'll say that, we've never had true communism. And I'll say we're drowning in it. Communism is everywhere almost all the time, involved in everything. So
yeah.
You have to define the term, and I define it as, the abolition of private, quote unquote, private property. I try not to use the adjective private unless I'm discussing their broken paradigm. I think there is only property. This thing called any adjective property is mostly invalid and contradictory. There is only property, owned property and unowned property, and those are the only two qualifiers that I try and ever put in front of property. But to a commie, the abolition of private property and the communal or group ownership of the means of production, which is an amorphous term for something that you use to produce value. Or to leverage to produce more value. I mean, that by that definition, communism is literally everywhere. So, all the roads are communistic, all the public schools, communistic, military, communistic, pretty much anything the government touches, communistic. You're expropriating massive amounts of wealth from just about everyone, and you're using, you're communally owning that and leveraging it to control the privately owned means of production as well as creating communal means of production.
Yeah.
So what was your question before I went on that little rant?
Oh, what, mine?
Yeah, what was your question about communism?
Oh yeah. I basically wanted to know, do you think communism has kind of played a huge role in most of the state's failures, because it seems like within the past couple hundred of years that communism has been a big setback in human progress, because a lot of states have implemented a lot of, communist, socialist-driven ideas and especially first world countries, and definitely developing and third world countries.
I think in the minds of the general public, the argument was lost a long time ago. Now it's only a matter of degree. Like, it's no longer a principled argument whether the government should tax you at 45% or 47%, because you've already given up. Like, once you give up taxation as a thing that they can do, all you're doing is quibbling over amounts. Like, there is no logical principled argument that 47% taxation is immoral, but 46% is acceptable and rightful behavior on the part of the government. And so in that way with communism, that argument was, the principle of the argument was lost a long time ago. Communism is a thing. The people fully believe that the government has the rightful authority to impose all sorts of expropriation of resources and centralized control and ownership of public resources. Now people are just quibbling over degrees. Even the Republican patriots are still quibbling over degrees of communism without realizing that they're still advocating within the system of communal ownership, or at very least socialistic ownership of all sorts of things. It's a question of, maybe your question is more of like overt versus subvert. A subvertive communism. Like, I don't think that the vast majority of people, even on the left, consider this stuff to be communistic or socialistic. Even though, God, man, everything we've talked about came up in a conversation last night at the meetup. We were talking about, like, if an organization was formed to advocate towards a certain method in the world, and then a couple generations later, people working for that organization no longer really understand or hold those beliefs, yet they're still working towards the same ends, just not knowing that it is those same ends. And the example last night was Planned Parenthood. Like, Planned Parenthood was set up to be what's the word when you're, killing parts of the population for, population control, eugenics. Planned Parenthood was set up for, as a eugenicist organization to, kill off the lesser, the riffraff from the species, in this case, black people, right? And now the modern day Planned Parenthood is full of a bunch of people that would never espouse any of those beliefs, and yet they're still working towards Planned Parenthood's goals, which ends up, in effect, killing mostly black babies. So, it's the same kind of question. Are the modern day people still, into euthanasia, eugenicism? Even though that they would say that they're not, and would abhor someone that claimed that they were, even though they're working towards the same ends. Well, same question for the government in general. They seem to be working towards communistic ends, though they don't realize it or wouldn't want to use that term. So subconsciously, is communism affecting the world? I don't think anyone, left, right, middle, anarchist, not, voluntarist, whatever, I don't think there is an argument that it's not. Overtly, I don't think most people would think it is, but how was that? That was kind of a convoluted answer, sorry.
No, that was awesome, because every time when I discuss any political issue that people are so basically, like, I would say, like, SJW level, like they don't want to hear about it, like they don't want to talk about it. I bring up pretty much every fact that is, supported behind it, and I counter with what is like the result of that. So whether it may be the police state here in America, I break down everything of what cops do. Police are not constitutionally required to protect you, so therefore the monopoly on security is pitted up against you. So that should mean that you should have a gun in case a cop wants to kill you out of nowhere, because guess what? Basically, like the minute you get shot and killed by the police officer, he or she will just go back to the courtroom, tell the judge a lie to protect themselves, and there's very little evidence to show that that cop was impeding on your freedoms. Vice versa, Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood was aimed at towards black people, as well with gun control. It was there to get rid of black people, but guess what? Planned Parenthood failed. And still Planned Parenthood is still trying to this day to lie, to say that, oh, no, it's about helping families, getting people out of poverty and making sure mothers are independent. No, it's actually doing the exact opposite. More men are going to jail for victimless crimes because they got in bed with somebody that they thought that was going to be there with them. But no, they turn their backs up against them, use up the guns of government to get them in prison. And now, there's more single mothers than actual, like responsible mothers. That destroys the concept of having a, cooperative monogamous family to raise better children, and vice versa with the military industrial complex. Like all these issues can easily be broken down to the simplest decree, but it's that mentality that people hold, within themselves to not accept the truth, and they just line up their ideology with that pool of ignorance. Because if they were to accept the truth, then everybody that they had once, stood behind with, they would try to do the same thing towards them, to say, "Oh, how dare you? Like you are basically talking nonsense about talking bad about the police state or Planned Parenthood. So you need to be shunned like everyone else." Like it's almost like a religion in a sense. Like if you're an atheist and you're in a Middle Eastern Muslim-driven community, like if you're in Saudi Arabia, they'll murder you if you actually identify as an atheist. Versus here in America, nobody doesn't care, because those ideas were probably had once been praised to say murder people that don't believe in God. But today, like there's a very few places in the world that actually do praise that type of thinking. And I think it's a crab mentality at the end of the day,
Motivations, like we're talking about the difference between what people are motivated by and the end result of those motivations, in that like the actual actions that they exert on the world. So like if a person murders somebody but they were motivated by kindness somehow, it doesn't really matter, because the act that they committed was murder. I was assuming it was non-consensual killing. And not, assisted suicide or something. So like, I don't see the utility too much in focusing on the motivations. If somebody disagrees and has a good reason to focus on people's, like the motivations of the shadowy figures donating to the stuff that we were talking about a while ago, or the motivations of the workers at Planned Parenthood, or the motivations of government employees. I don't see a lot of utility in understanding that and using that as a conversation point, because that's not objective. People's motivations are mostly opinions, and they're wishy-washy based on feels, and that stuff is really hard to address in any kind of conversation. I mean, maybe it's good to understand so that you can predict future behavior. That's probably the best argument for it, right? But when in terms of like holding people accountable for their actions, like my argument against somebody working for Planned Parenthood would not be, hey, that organization was started for the purposes of, eugenics and to kill the black people. I would say, hey, your organization is murdering a crapload of people. And, it would be the concurrent contemporary effects of their actions that I would sort of hold them to account to, rather than the original intent or even their own intent. Like, hey, yeah, their intent is to help women in need in bad circumstances. I don't know. What do you think?
Honestly, I just call it out for what it is. I don't try to sugarcoat anything. I like to speak facts, and like everyone has said, facts don't care about your feelings, and I strongly believe in that, because if you try to bring feelings to it, people like to abuse those ideas to make you feel bad about what you actually try to say to them, and then they try to like walk away from the actual conversation, and they don't want to talk about it. And I think that's a very SJW mentality way of just being a pussy. That's what I think of it. And if you're not going to express about what the truth is being told, then it seems like that you're too enslaved to actually be responsible and actually like think about taking out these types of problems. And therefore, you don't really care about it, because you wish to be I guess like ignorant to keep those problems going.
Let's see. Bastiat asks, have you ever looked into Moral Luck by Thomas Nagel? I've heard the name Thomas Nagel, and I've also heard the term that I think you're referring to, but I have not read on it. So if you have a resource that you think would be interesting to me, please send it over. I appreciate it. Sam Harris wrote a pamphlet on free will, but I never really heard libertarians talk about intentions and the idea of moral luck. I did a video. It was actually a live stream where I responded to a big, I guess, dissertation or debate on free will. I was actually playing a video game because it was a long thing. It was like a 2 or 3 hour stream. So I was playing some VR video games while debating philosophy. It was pretty funny. You can look that up. But yeah, we were discussing free will and we only have a couple minutes left, so I don't want to get into it again here today. So I'll just refer you to those previous videos. And if you have any resources you'd like me to look over, and I'll just do one more shout out. So we've had a great conversation here today. A lot of people in the comments. If something came up that you'd like to come on the show and talk to me about, I try and keep an open door policy because I'm really out here looking for good conversations, debate or otherwise. Drop me a line if you'd like to do that. Kiernan, is there anything else that you'd like to say before we go?
Yeah, one more thing. Is it Boogaloo time yet?
That again is a very personal decision. There is not one answer. You have to do. And I had somebody recently reach out to me, and I'll say this. This is probably a good topic because I was a little freaked out, to be honest. I put out a couple videos on the church shooting that happened. And I kind of made some pretty clear points that, people need to start standing up for their rights. And I think one of the things I said was, we have to start staking our lives on the rights that we want to keep, because the rights that we don't stake our lives on are the ones that get taken from us pretty quickly. And so the logical conclusion of that is pretty clear, things that you don't want to necessarily say outright on platforms like YouTube. But I don't know, several days after that video, somebody approached me privately and were talking about, where their line is for sort of resistance. And I could tell that I got a very clear sense that their line was a lot more immediate than mine was. They were much more ready to resist immoral control sooner rather than later. And I got a little freaked out, and it's just because I say these words, and so I went back and I listened to my videos on the church shooting, where I talk about. I'm going to mute your mic, man. It's kind of buzzing a little bit. I'm going to kind of give this last rant, and then I'll bring you back on to say goodbye here in a second. Right. I went back and I listened to the videos, and I very carefully examined all of the words that I said, and every single word that I said was 100% true and accurate and precise, and I meant every word of it. But wow, it's a little scary when you think about putting some of this stuff into action. Like when you think about what I said, staking your life on your rights. That is an intense thing to do. That is a scary thing to do. That is a very, very serious thing to do. And you have to no, Phobes, I'm not talking about you, actually. But I've had a few conversations around it, but Phobes, you're not the specific one I'm talking about. Excuse me. And so hearing that someone's line, I tell people very clearly, everybody needs to determine where their own line is, and they have to be careful, and they have to really consider it carefully, because this is life and death stuff that we're talking about. This is very, very serious stuff. When I say stake your life on something, we are necessarily talking life or death. And somebody else, to not call them out by name, the stuff going on in Virginia right now is life and death stuff. Like when I say stake your life on defending your rights, that is contemporary, that is here and now armed resistance to government control happening in Virginia right now. It is as serious as it gets. And when I say these things, and I'm not saying that these people are doing this based on what I said, maybe they are, but it just put real world consequences to the words that I said. And I had to go back, and I got a little freaked out, and I went back and I listened to everything I said to make sure that I'm not just speaking crazy talk and leading people off a dangerous cliff. And I mean, I listen to it, and the things I say are very reasonable. This is like basic stuff, guys. Like, it's not a right if it's not something you can defend yourself, with up to and including deadly force if necessary. Like, it is literally not a right. You don't have a right to live if you can't use violence when necessary to defend that life. You don't have a right to self-defense if you can't use violence when necessary to defend yourself or to, protect your ownership of the tools needed to defend yourself. So I guess what I want to say is I want to caution people. I want to say be cautious, be careful. Don't make these decisions lightly. It's life and death. And is there a time and place? Absolutely. Do I have a line in the sand, when it gets crossed that I will of course, I have a line in the sand is what I'm saying. And I think everybody should at least if nothing else, spend the time and mental energy to find exactly where that line in the sand is so that you can be ready for it when it comes and gets crossed, instead of, reacting in a terrible situation without forethought and without planning, in which case it might turn out to be terrible. The last thing I'll say on it is that, like, I don't think your line in the sand should be based on activism in the world, like as an activist. Because wherever that line ends up being, depending on how early in time, like if you stood up for your rights today, the media is still in the tank for the government, and the government is very good at propaganda. And the problem with all of that is that the vast majority of the population will believe the media and the government when they call you an extremist, terrorist, anarchist, voluntarist, whatever. They're going to go grab all the labels that the person was associated with. And as an activist, all the normies in the world will then associate those labels with what they will interpret as being bad and evil actions. So I just wanted to point out that, like, this line in the sand in which you stake your life on defending your rights, don't necessarily do it as an activist, because, and I'm not going to make a conclusive statement that this is not the time and place, but you just got to think about how it's just same way we do with the Feed the Need event, guys. Like, it's all about the message and the optics. Like, the cops don't want the headline that they got into an armed shootout to stop people from feeding the homeless. Well, consider the headlines of the actions that you take and make sure that they will, make sure that they won't countermand the activism you're trying to do in the world. I need to think about this more. And if somebody wants to come on the show, and the people know who I'm talking to, if you want to come on the show anonymously and try and talk through this, like the decision points and the line in the sand and what you plan on doing, I might be open to having that conversation, although we probably won't publish it on YouTube or Facebook. That'll probably be something that appears on BitChute or Float or something like that. So, all right, let me unmute you, man. Sorry for leaving you muted so long. Do you have any last words, so to speak?
Yeah. I just care about freedom, and I'll fight till the day I die. Honestly, I really do like, libertarians a lot. I think, libertarianism has really made me a lot more sociable and a lot more creative and a lot more funnier. And I definitely have a lot of good talks with people that are different in ideas. But it's good to get my ideas challenged, and I could challenge other people's ideas, so that way there's a cradle piece of certain principles that people can go by that will eventually turn into a reality. But I definitely do credit people like you, Larkin, Cal Mona, people that actually have committed a lot of time and effort to, to spreading freedom and liberty. And I hope I can do that one day with the ideas that I can implement to help out many.
All right, man. Well, it was cool to have the conversation. Thanks for reaching out. I'm sorry that it probably took 2 months to actually lock me down with all the medical stuff going on to actually have you on the show. So I apologize for the delay, but I'm glad that we finally made it happen. Guys in the comments, thanks for your support. Supporters, you rock. I appreciate it. Thanks for the donation again. Anarchy for Freedom over there on Float. It looks like Verbal Armament just posted the PDF of the article that I brought up earlier on the stream on the Discord server. So if you're not a member of our Discord server, there's a lot of really cool, chill people that are polite. We try and keep a drama-free Discord. Unlike most of the other, it seems like it's wall-to-wall drama. We don't do that. The purpose of the Discord server that we have is to have good conversations with people, to introduce them to the ideas of voluntarism. And we also play video games. So anything outside of those two goals, we don't really allow around the server for very long. So if you want a chill community of nice people, come check us out on the Discord server. You can find a join link in the description of most of the videos on this platform. Disenthrall.me. I'll throw it up here again. Disenthrall.me/platforms for all the links to all of our stuff. And we will catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
Well, thanks.